Welcome to ET Global University's webinar powered by Binghamton University. Today we're joined by Douglas Harrington, Associate Director, Undergraduate Admissions, Binghamton University, and Lexi Avery, Senior Associate Director, Student Engagement and Career Readiness, Binghamton University. Welcome, Lexi. Welcome, Douglas.
Hello.
Thank you.
Binghamton University, right? Is there a better way to pronounce it for our students joining in?
No, Binghamton University, yep.
Great. So welcome everybody and good morning and good evening based on where you're joining from. I'm assuming it's good morning and early morning for both Lexi and Douglas.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you for joining us bright and early. And this especially is for our students who are joining in. And we'll be discussing questions that students have when they're especially applying from colleges outside and students applying from outside the country. And they have a lot of questions around undergraduate admissions. So we'll be diving deep into those aspects when we speak today. So look forward to your insights, Doug and Lexi. So let me start with you, Doug. Binghamton is ranked today as one of the top 10 public Ivy universities. So just wanted to understand what is that public Ivy and how did Binghamton kind of earn this accolade?
Absolutely. So that is an excellent question. So again, hello everyone. This is Doug Harrington here with Binghamton University. I am a proud Binghamton alum myself, so I did attend Binghamton for both undergrad and graduate school, and I can certainly attest to the wonderful nature that Binghamton has to offer for our students, and we are very proud to receive this accolade of being a public Ivy. So a public Ivy, which we were given to by Forbes magazine, which is, if you're unfamiliar with Forbes, United States, but it's essentially Forbes surveyed a lot of managers in the workforce and employers where they seek students that have a pretty diverse set of skills, which don't always find in what we call the Ivy League schools here in the United States, which you might be very familiar with: Harvard, Princeton, Yale, schools that are very difficult to get into and that are very well known here, both in the States and globally, of course. But they're finding that students that are graduating from these schools don't necessarily have the skill set that they might be looking for, that these employers are looking for. So these employers are kind of spreading far and wide in regards to getting their new employees and finding those students that have that right curriculum where these universities set up students very well in order to be very successful after they graduate, right? So Binghamton has been named a public Ivy, meaning that you can get an Ivy League quality education here at Binghamton University for a public school price. We are a public university here in New York, which has a lot of different connotations, but we are one of those top public Ivies here in the United States, which we're very excited again to have that accolade here at Binghamton, because it just goes to show that we do set up our students very well for success postgraduate, which obviously is a very big concern for a lot of students. Between our office, Lexi's office here does a wonderful job of setting up students very well after they graduate. So it's just something that we're incredibly proud of here, and just goes to show the return on investment that students can get here from being a Binghamton University student.
No, great. That's great to hear, Doug. And in a way, you're combining the affordability with the access to very high quality education, right? Which is probably what a lot of international students are also looking at, right? When they're trying to join university and college for the first time.
Exactly. Yep. So we are known as a top value institution here in the United States. So it's certainly, like you said, combining that affordability piece with the high opportunity for job prospects. If students are looking to stay here in the States, we have great proximity to amazing locations like New York City. We're only about 3-hour car drive from there. Boston, Washington, D.C. are also just a few hours away, Philadelphia. So we have a lot of really big major cities in the Northeast that are only just a few hours away for our students, which makes it super accessible for them to go out and find really amazing internships and also full-time jobs once they do graduate.
Great. I think staying with you, Doug, I think the other question probably students would be asking is, there are different types of undergraduate courses, right? People might be looking at courses in, say, tech or finance or, other subjects, etc. So if you can speak to the kind of academic programs being offered, and therefore, what kind of profile of students maybe would find that valuable when they're applying at Binghamton. Binghamton?
Absolutely. So Binghamton offers a wide range of academic programs here. We have over 130 different academic majors and programs. So there's quite a bit of option for our students to come in and figure out exactly what they want to do. Binghamton was actually founded as a liberal arts college. So we
Okay.
have a strong liberal arts background here at Binghamton, which allows students, like I said, to kind of come in and figure out what exactly they want to do. So, as I said, we have over 130 different programs. So we have our Harper College of Arts and Sciences, which is our largest school here and houses about 120 of our 130 different majors and programs. So that's where all of our science fields, both physical and social sciences, you have our arts programs, maths, languages, all of that is going to be housed within our Arts and Sciences College. So very strong liberal arts base here at Binghamton. But outside of that, we do have some professional schools as well, like our School of Management, which is our business school here at Binghamton. We are actually known as one of the top 10 public business schools in the entire United States here. So it's a very strong business program. That's where I actually graduated from. I graduated from our School of Management here. But within that, we have two different majors. We have business administration and we have accounting. So very strong programs, again, especially because of our proximity to a lot of different major cities in the Northeast. We have our Watson College of Engineering and Applied Science, where we do have 5 different engineering majors. We have biomedical, mechanical, industrial and systems, computer, and electrical engineering. And it's really great, super hands-on activities and labs and everything like that within the engineering curriculum. And then we also have our computer science program that falls within our Watson College of Engineering and Applied Science, where they go to all the top companies that I'm sure many of the students on the call have heard of: Google, Amazon, Apple. All of those great companies come and recruit heavily here at Binghamton. Then we have our Decker College of Nursing and Health Sciences for anyone interested in nursing. We have our College of Community and Public Affairs for our human development and social work programs. And then we also have a School of Pharmacy here as well. So as students interested in getting a doctorate in pharmacy, you do have those programs. So lots offered here. We don't specialize in one specific thing. We have a lot of great variety available for our students. And again, if you're not exactly sure what you want to do, that's perfectly okay, because you can come in as undecided and kind of explore and kind of figure out what exactly you might want to do. But having that flexibility and having the ability to add maybe a double major or a minor, or even just take courses in what you're interested in, can really boost that profile of yours when you do graduate and, put it on your resume to, when you start having those interviews with, employers for internships, full-time jobs. Even if you just put it as an interest where you can then lead into, hey, I took some courses in this. Like for me, as I mentioned, I was a business student. I'm also a big theater person. I enjoy theater and the live theater and the arts and everything. So I was actually able to combine my interests, and I had a marketing internship at a regional theater on Long Island when I was a student. So there's a lot of great ways that you can combine both your academic passions and your personal passions as well.
No, that's great to hear, and especially this marketing internship in a regional theater. I think it's very, very great to hear. And if I try to understand and summarize this, there could be 3 personas of students. There could be people coming in undecided, like you mentioned, and given the focus on liberal arts and the combination and the flexibility of subjects, they could therefore, choose to major or double major in their subjects of choice, and even look at academic and vocational passions, combining them. So that's one category. Second is probably people who are more, they have traditional choices, engineering and maybe management, traditional choices of careers that, of course, again, they would get a chance to career and major in those. And third is the upcoming more future ready courses, which could be, say, pharmacy, biomedical, nursing, etc., where the trend is picking up now, and maybe the people could actually come in and find an opportunity to learn and graduate in those as well. So am I right in understanding these 3 kind of personas of students, when they're looking for applications to the university?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. I think, Binghamton just has a great opportunity to diversify yourself,
Yeah.
and whatever you might be interested in, because Binghamton has quickly expanded, right, to have all of these great majors and programs, because we were founded as a liberal arts college, but we were only founded in 1946. So we are not as old as many of a lot of other top flagship public institutions throughout the United States that you might hear about, your University of Michigan or, University of Pennsylvania or anything like that. We're less than 100 years old, and Binghamton has quickly developed this, atmosphere of being able to kind of find exactly what you're looking for, and allow you to explore, and quickly has risen to become, the top public institution in New York State, with all of the different programs and everything. So we continually look at the market to see what kind of programs that we can add. We've added, cybersecurity under our computer science program. So seeing what the students are interested in and seeing what kind of courses and majors that we can, or even minors. We have a digital and data studies minor, which is very popular amongst our students here at Binghamton. So we're always looking to add those new programs to see what the students are interested in, to kind of keep up with everyone.
Great. No, thank you, Doug, for mentioning that. I think let me come to you, Lexi. So I think one of the key things students look for, right? Not just the learning, but at the end of the day, I think from learning, they're looking at a job. And that is getting increasingly more and more dynamic, right, with the changes around us. And Binghamton also has a career center on campus. And I wanted to understand from you, what is the purpose of having such a career center? And if you can explain a little bit about what students could experience, as part of that career center.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Career Center. I'm also an alum of the university, so incredibly.
That's brilliant. Both of you are alums. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I'm proud to still be connected to the university. I would say from a Career Center perspective, I like to think about it as a complement and enhancement to the education that students are getting, right? As you mentioned, the job search is dynamic. Industries are changing very rapidly. Careers that existed now didn't exist, 10 years ago when I first started. And so it really requires students to be a lot more dynamic and purposeful in the time that they're spending outside of the classroom when it comes to finding experience, gaining skills, and building connections. And so I like to think of us as sort of a partner with students throughout their experience. So certainly students should be taking classes, doing well, studying, all of those things. But it's no longer just enough to have, a good GPA.
Yes.
It's really, really important that they're thinking about, what skills am I gaining from my classes? What connections am I gaining? What, processes, procedures, and technical skills, industry knowledge is important for me to develop while I'm in school, so that when I am applying for internships or full-time employment, I have those skills. And not only do I have them, but I can talk about them, right? With employers, with graduate schools, whatever it might be. So, I think the Career Center is incredibly important on a college campus. Students should be utilizing those services and resources because we are a partner with them to really maximize what they're learning in the classroom. And we do a variety of different things. And the campus as a whole has invested a lot in the Career Center. And we see a lot of students on campus. Of the 18,000, we see about 11,000 of those students in some capacity year over year. And that's also in partnership with career centers in some of the colleges on campus, as Doug mentioned. So our School of Management also has career center support. Our Watson College also has career center support. And some of the other schools as well have additional staff that are intended to help students really maximize their experience on campus. So it's not just, the education, it's not just, finding connections, building community on campus, but it's also finding partners in how do I take what I'm learning and really expand on those things. And we do a variety of things that I'm happy to kind of, go into more detail on if that's helpful. But I would really encourage students to think of us as a partner. When they arrive at Binghamton, they have us with them their entire experience. And so we get to know them, we can work with them, we get to know their skills, their areas for growth, and how do we enhance on those throughout their time here.
Great. No, that's great to hear, Lexi. I think one thing which you mentioned, I think that'll also stay with me, like good CPGA or good CGA or a good GPA. I think that's not enough anymore, right? You need to really focus on how can you apply your skills to the real world? And maybe it's a combination of skills, like Doug mentioned, maybe some major, some minor, some vocational and some professional, or it's, different skill sets and certifications and internships all together, which define a person and make them unique. And that's the support probably they can get when they're interacting beyond just academics. So we'll come back to the details which you offered, Lexi. I think the students would love to know that. But
Yeah.
before that, would just love to know, I think some of the companies Doug had mentioned, right, where people are going. But if you can drill down a little bit into, if you look at your current graduating batches, maybe this year, previous year, couple of years, but where are most of these students going? Are they continuing with education? Are they joining certain kind of companies? And if so, what kind of companies? I think that would be great knowledge for the students to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. So we took a look at the class of 2023. That's the one we have the most data on at this point. And about half of our undergraduate students tend to go on to graduate school in some capacity. So that could be staying at Binghamton, which a lot of them do choose to do because they enjoy their experience, they build relationships with faculty. And so it makes logical sense for them to kind of continue that journey. And the other half do choose to pursue full-time employment. And so when we look at our international student population, that trend stays fairly consistent. When we looked at about half, a little bit more than half, go on to graduate school, where the other percentage does choose to pursue full-time employment. And when we look at sort of where students are going, it really depends on their major. When we look at students that are in our School of Management, they do tend to go down, financial services, accounting track. We have a lot of really great relationships with companies like Deloitte, PwC, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, a lot of the different banks, large banks in the United States. And so it really is going to depend on their major and sort of what they want to pursue. So that's kind of, one bucket. But then we certainly have students, I would say growing is UX design, UI design for students. Certainly companies like Google, Amazon, a lot of different startups too are becoming popular because students can really get their hands into what's happening. And so when we look at, again, that class of 2023 and the students pursuing full-time employment, it's really kind of all over the place depending on their degree. We certainly have students going into marketing. We certainly have students that are going into the arts in some capacity. As I mentioned, UI and UX design is really growing. Graphic design is growing for students. And then those more traditional technical roles in computer science and things like that. It's really sort of, across the board, but those are some of the more broad companies. I'll say too, when we look at the class of 2023 and really the past few years, the average salary for Binghamton University students is $6,000 to $7,000 more than the national average. And so students, again, are really getting that academic experience that they want, but they're also getting that reward, on the back end of graduation, that their salaries are really, competing with the national average, which we're really excited about. And it just speaks to the quality and the caliber of students at Binghamton. And I think the opportunities available for them.
Great, great. So I think 50% might be continuing higher education, but the balance 50 are applying to either startups or large companies, traditional companies, as well as emerging disciplines like UI, UX, etc. And of course, based on the major, based on the function, and based on the kind of vertical in which they are. For example, nursing, pharmacy will be very specialized in the kind of opportunities there.
Yes, yes. And I'll also add, if students would like to kind of dive into that a little bit more, on our website, we actually track the last 3 classes in a cohort sort of model. It's called Bing Career Destinations. And so we're tracking alumni and kind of what their experience is. And students can actually filter that website by major. And it will show the average salary for that major over the last 3 years. It will also show where students intern, where they went on for full-time employment, and where they went on to graduate school based on each major. And that's also based on, results that we get. So some majors might have more data than others. But that's a really good resource to kind of see where, based on majors I'm thinking about and really considering and excited about, going in and just getting more information about some of the intricacies about specific companies and roles and things like that.
I think for me, what's that even more useful, I feel, is that not just the final destination, but the pathway. right? So
Yeah.
maybe in between the internship or in between maybe some certification, if they can understand that, and I'm sure they can then connect with them on LinkedIn, and alumni, is always very helpful, right? So that can
Yes.
help them figure out their pathways and not just focus on one destination and find a way to get there. So that's
Yeah.
really helpful, right? To go to the website and check that out. So let's come back
Yeah.
to the details you had mentioned, Lexi, in
Yeah.
terms of the career services again, because that's something very, very useful for students. So if you
Yeah.
can just drill down a little bit on the kind of resources available there, which students can avail of.
Yeah. I'll focus sort of on a couple main buckets that are probably familiar to students and what a lot of different career centers offer. And then I'll go into some specifics that I think make Binghamton really special. So we certainly help students identify what major is a good fit for them. So as Doug mentioned, students can come in undecided. Some students come in with a major in mind, but once they start taking classes or they get exposure to different things, they choose to change their mind or add a double major or something like that. And so we can help students kind of navigate that, and really what I like to do is really leverage that academic experience and help students say, if I really enjoy my major, what can I do with that major, and how can I get there, right? That path that you mentioned being really important. We also help students with the traditional things around resumes, CVs, cover letters, so sort of those written materials. Students can make appointments and are drop-ins, so they can just literally walk in and meet with someone to talk about those documents. We also support students in finding experience. So depending on the type of industry they want to get into may indicate what type of experience is most relevant for them. So a lot of times that's internships. That's sort of one of our main ways for students to gain experience. So we offer the largest credit-bearing internship program on campus. So students can actually get credit for their internship through our office. And they're taking an asynchronous class as they go through their experience. So it's not just having an experience, but it's really reflecting and saying, okay, what am I learning from this experience? What skills am I developing? And how do I translate that to my resume, my cover letter, my LinkedIn profile, things like that. So we'll support students through finding opportunities and through the application process. We'll also support them in getting them connected to other experiences on campus, like research, community engagement, things like that. Lots of different partnerships exist at Binghamton. And so we can kind of help students navigate what makes sense for them into the types of skills that they're wanting to gain and the connections that they're trying to build. And then on sort of the tail end of their experience, whether they're looking for full-time or graduate school, we'll help them through that application process, whether it's reviewing a personal statement, reviewing, again, their resume. We have a mock interview program, so we'll provide feedback to students in the actual mock interview, which, as if you've ever interviewed anywhere, you don't get feedback a lot of times in the interview, right? You just hear yes or no. And so we're able to say, okay, here are some industry-specific questions. Here's how you're answering them. Here's the feedback I would give. How do we craft them to be stronger? So those are sort of the 4 buckets, I would say, in terms of the Career Center. What makes Binghamton unique, I think, is our connection to alumni, which I think you mentioned previously. There's nowhere that I've ever seen colleagues work that has as much affinity for their campus as Binghamton does. So we leverage alumni quite a bit in terms of helping to build connections for students, to educate students on their path, and to cultivate opportunities, right? That's what our employer relations team does. And so whether it's the mentoring platform that we have on campus, or our employer trek program, so students can go and visit different cities that we've scheduled essentially like site visits at with different companies. So I've been to Google, I've been to, lots of these different companies with alumni who work there, and students are able to actually tour the space. They're able to learn about the different internship and full-time opportunities. So our employer trek and networking program, I think, is really special and unique to Binghamton. And then I'll also say fairly new for us is our Skills Lab initiative. So again, you can't rely on just the GPA anymore. And so helping students really cultivate and develop different skill sets. We bring alumni and employers in to teach students specific skill sets that are relevant to industries they're interested in. And that helps, again, just to complement the education that they're getting. So we do a variety of things, but I think those are some of the things that make Binghamton really special and really intentional with the work we're doing around their career development.
Right. No, that's very interesting, especially because I remember last year there was a study done in India, but similar, for undergraduate students, and it mentioned that what recruiters look for, among fresher graduates, and what the coming graduates, the class of, maybe 25 or 26 is looking at, thinking they would really be good at that and that would be valued, there's a very big gap, right? And that gap
Yeah.
comes from lack of skills and, lack of maybe even things like maybe communicating in the right way, the experience which they have got from their internship, etc. And somebody, being able to help them through that, not just the final goal, but the preparation and the customization needed, I think is a great help when you're on campus.
Yes, definitely.
Great. So, yeah, I think we spoke a lot about jobs. Let's come back now to the university itself, Doug. And, so when students are applying, right, especially they're applying to colleges from different locations, and from a country far away, there are many parameters, right, on which they try to understand which is the right university for them. So if you could help us understand, on these parameters, which you look at, what would make, Binghamton a great value or a great choice for students applying?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the key word is value.
Yeah.
Binghamton is incredibly ranked with its value, number one public value in New York, really great value in the United States. And it kind of goes along with a lot of the things that Lexi said, with career services, how our students have a higher average starting salary than the U.S. national average. But it also boils down to a few other numbers that I like to point out as well. The first one being our student retention rate. Our student retention rate, our first year retention rate, gets overlooked a little bit, but it's something that we're super proud of because we have a 90% first year retention rate. So retention rate, for those on the call who may not know what a retention rate is, right? It's how many students come for their first year and how many students stay for their second year. So a 90% first year retention rate is one of the highest rates in the entire United States. The national average for public institutions is in the 60% range. So we're over 30 points higher than the U.S. national average in terms of our retention rate. So our students are coming to Binghamton. They're enjoying it so much, not only because of where Binghamton can take them and the value that they're getting post grad with great internship and full-time job opportunities, but it's the community while you're here, right, as well. So it's the great atmosphere that you get to be involved in, and our students, are really taken care of by the university. There's always things to do, which we'll talk about for the next question as well. But there's always a bunch to do here on our campus. Not only that, I always love to talk about our 4-year graduation rate. So when you look at other schools in the United States, a lot of them may give their 5 or even their 6-year graduation rate. We're very comfortable with our 4-year graduation rate. So our 4-year graduation rate is a 73%, which may not sound like an awful lot to some folks, but again, you're comparing that to the U.S. national average of 39%. So again, we're over 30 percentage points higher than the U.S. national average in terms of getting our students out on time or in 4 years or less even, depending on what curriculum that you might be in for your high school. If you're in an IB curriculum, if you're taking A levels through the, Cambridge, if you're in a US system and you're taking AP exams, Binghamton offers credit for all of those exams, which really allows you some really great flexibility. When you're here, you may take a few more electives to kind of, fuel your passion, whatever it might be. I always use myself as an example. I came in with 32 credits from high school with my AP exams. I got my bachelor's in just 3 years here. So I graduated a full year early from Binghamton, and then I stuck around for our fast track master's program. So I got both my bachelor's and master's degrees in just 4 years here. So we allow for that flexibility to maybe you graduate early. That saves you so much money in the long run, talking about why Binghamton is such a top value institution. And then, like I said, everything that Lexi already mentioned with the connections that we have with internships, full-time jobs, with our alumni base. We have such a strong alumni base. As you can see here, we have 2 on the call right now that, so proud of our university that we didn't even want to leave. So, you have all of those connections built in for you once you come here as a student here at Binghamton. So just a couple reasons why Binghamton is such a great value for our international students here. Absolutely.
Great. And I think especially as you mentioned, the flexibility, certain countries do have that, right? You can finish your undergraduate in 3 years and, you graduate in 1 year. Being able to kind of do that by taking credits from AP and maybe, adding a fast track program to it, and then being able to graduate and have really good access to job, which is higher than national average, and having all the career support services, I think probably would give a more enriching experience, right, at the right value to students. Especially, Doug, anything for Indian students? You would have seen Indian students in your current and previous batches as well. Anything you've seen Indian students place a lot of value on when they apply and they are successful at Binghamton?
Absolutely, yeah. So India, we is our second most top sending country. So I like to say for our Indian students that you're certainly not going to be alone here. We have some
Great.
amazing Indian cultural organizations here at Binghamton. Like we have a Hindu Student Council here at Binghamton. I have them written down here. We have our Indian International Student Union here. So we have amazing cultural organizations for our Indian students. And I always like to say for our students, if you want to be a part of an innovative, inclusive university on the threshold of some groundbreaking research that really fosters an engaging community, that's Binghamton in a nutshell, essentially. And we didn't even touch upon the research here. We're an R1 research institution, so if you're interested in that research piece, we have a Nobel Prize winner on our campus. A Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, our professor Stanley Whittingham. He is credited with inventing the lithium-ion battery. So everything that powers our cell phones, our laptops, everything like that is all thanks to him. And he works with our students. So, you have amazing opportunities to kind of find yourself here at Binghamton, but not. We understand that, studying far away from home can be a challenge, so we want to make that transition as easy as possible. So you're not alone in this. We have great resources on our campus, not only Lexi's office and the career services, but we also have like our ISSS office, our International Student and Scholar Services office, which is pretty much there for anything that you might need when it comes to visas or, finding those cultural organizations and just having that transition to the States, because we understand that it's a big transition. So we want to make sure that every student feels at home here. Binghamton we have lots of different safety features around between our university police. They are state police, being a state university. They're not just security guards or anything like that. We are a gated campus as well. Key card access into your residential halls. We have a fantastic student-run ambulance service on our campus. So there's a lot of different features to make sure, again, that Binghamton feels at home, because we want it to feel at home. We want this to be your home for 3, 4, 5 years, however long you're with us. So we want to make sure that you're comfortable here, and that you find everything that you're looking for right here at Binghamton.
Right. No, thank you so much for delving deep into all the different aspects and the questions students would have as they are preparing. I know they're looking at colleges next year. There are already quite a few questions coming in from the people attending. So should we move to that and maybe culminate our discussion and take the student questions?
Perfect.
So what I'll do is, we have a bunch of questions here on chat. So maybe I can read them out, and Doug and Lexi, whoever of you wants to answer, you can take that. Is that fine?
Sure.
Great. So I think the first question is more around what qualities or achievements do you look for in international applicants? Say people applying from India. What do you look at when you're shortlisting profiles?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really great question. So when we're reviewing our applications, we conduct what we call a holistic review, right? So we are taking every bit of information on that application into consideration. So certainly one of the first things that we're going to be looking at is your GPA. We will calculate a GPA based on whatever system that you're in, whether it be, you've taken your board exams or whatever, if you've taken your A-levels or IGCSEs, again, if you're in an IB curriculum, depending on the curriculum that you're in, we will kind of, evaluate your transcript based off of whatever curriculum that you're in. So that's obviously one piece of information that we're going to look at, but we're also going to be looking at a bunch of other things. Binghamton is SAT, ACT optional. So it is entirely up to our students whether or not you want to submit those. But if you do, we will take them into consideration, right? That's your SAT and your ACT. Sometimes we need English proficiency scores, but we've been waiving them for Indian students as of recently, just because we find that Indian students do have very strong English already. So we are reviewing that on a case by case basis. So, but that could be part of the requirement, where if you do have to submit your English scores, we will take that into consideration as well. But then it's things like your essay, letter of recommendation, extracurricular activities that you're involved with, different things. So we are taking every bit of information on that application into consideration. We like to say that we like nice, well-rounded students here at Binghamton. There's not going to be one specific thing that we're going to value over another thing here.
No, great. I completely understand. And while there's no, there's no perfect recipe, I think it's like the overall, the overall value of the candidate, right, which comes through in
Right.
multiple different ways, not just the
Hmm.
academics, but their interest, the way in which they would probably fit into the campus, etc. But these are all things which you look at, and I think looking at maybe waiving off the SAT scores, or looking at English requirements, being a little bit more flexible. All these are helpful when people are applying to multiple universities and trying to find the best home for themselves.
Exactly.
Um, I think there's another related questions. Any resources or programs which can help Indian students prepare for admissions, for Binghamton?
There's not a specific resource or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're working with, if you have a college counseling office in your high school, you want to make sure that you utilize them as a resource. They're really great and very knowledgeable about the application processes,
Yeah,
not only for, you know, for Binghamton, but for, coming to the states and applying to the states and everything. So you definitely want to utilize that resource as much as possible. But really, don't rush through your application. Definitely take your time with it. And you always want to put as much on your application as you possibly can, because that's the way that we get to know you, right? We get over 50,000 first year applications, so we get quite a bit in terms of our volume. So we only have a small amount of time in order to get to know you as a student. So that's why I always recommend putting as much as possible, even if it's just a stretch on your extracurricular activities. You do something at home, you watch your brother and sister because your parents are working late, it just gives us an overall general dynamic of who you are, and that's what we kind of want to see.
right. The individual and not just the resume. I think that
Right.
is the next question. How do you make your profile stand out?
Right. So there's a couple different things. Like I said, making sure you put as much on the application as possible. I get applications where the extracurricular section is blank, or they have like
Mm.
one thing. And just naturally as humans, there's a bunch of different things that we might do, but you might not realize that that's what we want to know about you, right?
Mm.
So just really fill up that application as much as possible. When it comes time to the personal statement, of course, you want to try to make your personal statement stand out as much as possible. There's a lot of different ways to do that, whether it be topic of your personal statement, or I always like to say, if you format your personal statement in a different way, because there are different ways to make you stand out. There are personal statements that I've read throughout my 7 years of being here that I remember um, very well because of how interesting that they were. So that's definitely a way that you can make yourself stand out. But honestly, if you're engaged with us, if you show that you're interested, uh, you know, your name will stick in our head. When you're reaching out, when you submit your materials as quickly as possible, because we want to turn around your decision as quickly as possible, right? We want to give you as much time to make your decision. So um, there's just a couple ways.
Right. Great. And as you mentioned, working with the high school office of careers, etc., can make them really go through the journey in a more easier way. I think there are a bunch of
Absolutely.
questions, so I'll continue. So I think this is more on the internships. So what kind of internships and co-op programs does Binghamton offer for international students?
Yeah, so students can, as I mentioned before, intern in a variety of different places. It's really tied to their academic choices. So their major in a lot of cases, especially when different visas come into play, right? There's a little bit more I guess strict nature when it comes to what the internship is and the specific industry. So typically we will also work with the ISSS office, so International Student and Scholar Services, to sort of determine what type of visa is necessary, what does the student have, what do they have access to, and then what type of experience is a good fit. So the Career Center doesn't advise on visas, so we partner with that ISSS office to make sure that we're giving students the right information and that they're applying to experiences that they actually are eligible to participate in. In terms of co-ops, so Binghamton doesn't have a co-op program. Typically, co-op programs delay graduation. And as Doug
Mhm.
mentioned, we want to get students to really maximize their experience. And so the curriculum in a lot of the programs that traditionally may have a co-op program, it would delay graduation for students. And so most of our students will do internships over the summer. Um, And so that tends to be, a good time to really fit that in. And students can get credit for that internship either through our office, or they can also work with their academic department at times to get credit through their department. But Binghamton doesn't have a co-op program really because of that graduation rate and wanting to maximize students' experience while they're here. A lot of programs do sort of embed work with employers and projects in the classroom. And so typically you see co-ops in more like engineering, computer science, that sort of area. And every aspect of our Watson College of Engineering and Applied Sciences, every part of that curriculum has project-based learning built into the classes. And so students may not have a co-op on their resume, but each semester they're adding specific projects to that document. And so they're still developing those skill sets, just adhering to that graduation timeline that we want to kind of keep in mind for students.
Great. So yeah, I think so. No co-op, but basically you're adding to your skills through internships and also through projects and opportunities. There are two questions already answered, but I'll still read them out just to make sure we have kind of clarified that. One is, which industries and companies are most actively hiring? The graduates, I think we've answered this. I think Lexi, you mentioned it, it depends on the sector and the function, etc., and startups as well as large companies. So we've answered that. And there's another question which also you answered now, which is, can I pursue internships or work on projects as part of my academic program? As you mentioned, it's during the summer, so it's inbuilt and it's not a co-op which can delay your graduation further.
And I'll just add too to that. I think depending on the student's major, there are some majors at Binghamton that students are required to do an internship. So it really just, it depends on the academic program. It depends what the expectations, are for that program, as to whether it's, the internship is embedded in the curriculum versus, a project or versus over the summer. So those are some things to keep in mind as students are kind of navigating, what's the right major for them. And I'll also say from the industry perspective, we run a variety of career fairs throughout the year. So we do career fairs in the fall semester and the spring semester. So we typically have a fairly large STEM fair. And then we do have a more general industry fair for students as well. So those, we try to map those fairs to kind of the hiring timelines of organizations as well. So I just wanted to mention that also.
Great. I think there are a couple of questions on, again, affordability. How affordable is the cost of living around campus? Are there also part-time jobs available that it may make it easier to kind of afford the stay part? And does the university have fee waivers or discounts for international students? So these are all, I think, around affordability.
Affordability, absolutely. So before I touch upon that, Lexi mentioned the career fairs. I just want to say when I attended the career fairs back when I was a student, I even got an on-spot interview with a company just by going to those career fairs. So they are wonderful, and Lexi's office does a great job of setting them all up. So, but affordability, the Binghamton area is a very affordable area. It's one of the reasons why I stuck around Binghamton, not only because I love the university, but I love the area as well. But the Binghamton area is a lot more affordable. So I know what students might be thinking when you hear New York, right? You think of New York City, and you're like, wow, that's an expensive place to be. Binghamton, like I said, is about a 3-hour drive away from New York City. So it is... we're far enough removed from New York City that you have great access to New York City, but you don't have New York City prices. So I always like to say, if you live in New York City and you go to a prominent university down there and you move off campus, you're renting a bedroom in a pretty small apartment for maybe 2,000, maybe 2,500 USD a month, depending, right? So it's pretty expensive. Here in Binghamton, you can move off campus and rent a bedroom in a pretty sizable house with some of your friends for around maybe 500 USD a month. So the price difference is quite substantial here at Binghamton. It is definitely a more cost-effective place to go to school and to live, which is very nice for our students. But you still have plenty of things to do off campus. We have sporting events, we have restaurants, we have museums, we have art galleries. So, I like to say that Binghamton has a little bit of everything for our students, which is really nice. But So very active off campus, and then on campus as well. We already talked about the different on campus things to do. There is the opportunity to a lot of our international students will get some part time jobs here on campus. There's lots of different offices that look for student workers, whether it be food service, tutoring. You can work in my office as a student tour guide, which is how I started. So there's definitely that opportunity. And speaking of
You mentioned
affordability too.
ambulance as well, right? Student run ambulance, etc.
That
Yeah.
is a student-run ambulance service, but that is so it's student-run, so it's like a student-run organization. So I
Okay.
don't think they get paid.
Okay.
It's like a volunteer ambulance service, but they are one of the top in the country. So that if you're interested in that, there is that opportunity as well. But not only that, with affordability and value, going back to value, Binghamton offers scholarships for international students, and it's all automatic consideration. So there's nothing extra that our students have to do when applying, you know, for admission. There's nothing extra that they have to do for their scholarships as well. So Binghamton will automatically consider all of our students for scholarship, especially our international students, and they range up to about 10,000 USD per year. So we do try to knock that cost down as much as we possibly can for our students as well, which is, again, is just one of the reasons why we are ranked as such a top value institution here at Binghamton.
Great. So I think that answers all the affordability questions. I think coming back to the job, there is a question, though we talked about internships, but this is around the overall, end year jobs, right? After you graduate. And there is a question about international students. Do they face challenges currently in the US job market, and how does the campus help?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, depending on who you ask, they'll have different, feedback and thoughts about the job market. I think international students definitely face more challenges, right, than a domestic student, really more so in terms of the visa process, than anything else, right? It generally has nothing to do with the students, their qualifications, and things like that. And so a lot of times we'll leverage things like the InterStride platform that we have, which is really designed for international students to help them sort of navigate what are companies that have petitioned for visas in the past, and the number of visas they've petitioned for. And so it gives us an idea of sort of which companies are a good option to kind of start applying to. And so that gives us a direction. But certainly the visa process can be challenging to kind of navigate. I think that's why the work throughout the students' 4 years in terms of getting internships, gaining experience, being able to talk about their skills is really important, because we want to make sure when they get through that process that they're prepared and they're ready, and they're qualified for those roles. So it certainly can be a challenge. We try to build relationships with employers that have a history of petitioning for visas. And so that gives students, at least more opportunity, right? So it's really about being intentional. I would say the other thing is sort of keeping in mind location, right? A lot of our students will want to move to a big city, and that's great. But there's a lot of students wanting to move to big cities. And so students have to be sort of flexible in figuring out, what's the role they want, what's the industry they want, and what's a location that's going to best serve their goals and their needs. And that doesn't always mean, the initial city that they thought of, right? Or it could be they'd apply to a company, they want to be in one location, but that company has locations elsewhere in the United States that, are a good match. So we're definitely seeing, I would say, more alumni sort of picking up in other locations. Just in our office alone, some of our student staff that have graduated, we've got alumni in like Atlanta, Georgia area, Texas, Chicago. So some of these other areas that are becoming a little bit more popular. Certainly, more affordable than New York City, for example, but gives students more options. So I would say international students may face challenges, but it's just that flexibility and that preparedness that they're keeping in mind. It's important to start early in the job search process and sort of knowing companies that they have in mind, start developing their network really early on so that they're maximizing all of the opportunities available for them. And then we do, like I said, leverage things like InterStride to give us some direction to kind of help students navigate that piece. But again, we're in partnership with them. We certainly don't, can't handle the visa process for them, but we will have to help them navigate so that they're putting their best, their best options forward, and that they're competitive, when they get those opportunities.
Right. I think the important thing to remember, like you said, is the partnership aspect and the fact that they may not be, just if then answers, it has to really be a contextual process, which will differ
Yeah.
based on location and function and requirements at the end of the journey. So yeah, I mean, just from my side, one quick thing. I know we are in towards the end of the year right now, but what are the timelines for the people who are applying for next year? So are there any specific dates to remember for the students?
Yeah, so for applications, so our early action deadline has passed. So that was back in November.
Great.
Um,
Yeah.
but our regular consideration deadline is January 15th. However, we if you want to apply to Binghamton and you don't quite get it in by the 15th, that's okay. The application will still stay open, so you can still apply. You want to apply by March, in order for us to get you an application for the visa process and everything like that, because that will take time. So definitely, you want to apply as soon as possible, but it will stay open for a little bit. So, but typically it's November 1st and January 15th are the deadlines. And then we'll need things like your again, it's going to depend on the curriculum that you're in. So if you're in an IB curriculum, we'll need your transcript. If you're in the IGCSE curriculum, we'll need your IGCSE exam results and your predicted O levels. If you're in the national curriculum, we'll need your grade 10 boards, and also your predicted 12s. So kind of depends on the curriculum, but we will need those. And then again, your test scores if you choose to submit them.
Great, great. So thank you. Thank you so much. This was a really, very interesting conversation and very informative for the students who have joined in. I'm sure they've got the answers to the questions they had and look forward to an amazing batch, joining you next year. And thank you so much for giving us the time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions about Binghamton admissions, you can always feel free to reach out to our office. I'll be more than happy to help answer anything for you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for the
so much.
opportunity.
Thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Douglas. And that's it from the team at ET.
Thank you so much.